This is the Ambrosia Society.org website, and recently, I think within the last couple of years, the owner of the website passed away, and since he paid for the domain, I believe, it got taken offline since he was no longer able to keep that up. So I thought the website would be lost forever, but I found it through the Wayback Machine, so we're able to still visit the website. It just takes a bit longer to load. And this is a really cool research website on the Amanita Muscaria mushroom, and of course its mythological context. So all I'm doing is going to screen record the front page, the research tab, and the sacred text tabs um, in order to archive it in the event that for some reason it's no longer available on the Wayback Machine, because it's worth documenting and archiving. So if all you're interested in is visiting the website, the link that I'm using will be in the description, so you can just go ahead and do that, because all this video is just going to be archiving it and screen capturing it. So yeah, that's all it is. They talk about all the different, or some of the main references in ancient texts: Odin, Dionysus, the living bread, the sacred wine, the resurrection, the holy grail, philosopher's stone, references in tarot, occult, mysticism, folklore, fairy tales, soma, helma, fruit of the tree of life, many of its divine names. They have a couple videos here. I think they're still available on YouTube, but I'm going to screen record this video in particular because this gives context to their ultimate research, the main point of kind of why they believe what they believe. Because not only does the mushroom contain all these special qualities and whatnot, there's another part of it that they call the resurrection process, in reference to the dying and rising gods, especially of Jesus, that has some interesting effects or qualities to it. So we'll just play it. Dried for 2 years, when hydrated with water, Amanita Muscaria resurrects in 3 days. And so this is just a time lapse. And they use a lot of interesting quotes, with which in context of this makes it very intriguing to think about. So this is just a dried Amanita mushroom. So you can start seeing there's a white growth happening. Kind of moldy looking threads. Behold the Lamb of God. Looks like wool. It's such a bizarre substance that you can only imagine that they came up with all of these different names for it. Um, the living bread, the multiplication of bread, the sacred wine, turning water into wine. Because they found out that this contains, I believe, muscimol. I don't know if that was chemically found out or if they just knew it because it had the same effects. I'm really not sure. There's a lot of unknown variables, and whether or not that this is something in the dried out Amanita muscaria that it reconstitutes. I believe it would probably be some sort of symbiotic fungus that lives in the Amanita, that when it's given water, it will grow and expand and start to decompose the mushroom. I think the mushroom gets decomposed in this process. I'm not actually sure. I'd have to look more into it again, but just the fact that whatever substance this is, it contains certain psychoactive compounds. And so you can imagine that there's a lot of lore associated with something that has this ability, on top of containing its special substances and perhaps its healing qualities as well. A lot of people use Amanita for healing abilities beyond just dreams and psychedelic experiences. What's interesting is that you can take from one mushroom and you can have a ton of this weird resurrected moldy looking thread like wool type stuff and literally multiply your use of the mushroom. So this is super important to their whole website, so I just wanted to share that to make sure it was recorded as well. All right, so let's go to just the first link. We'll go down the lists. The fruit of the tree of life. And so they're just going to have, all the different trees that the Amanita Muscaria is mycorrhizal with. And then they're going to go through a bunch of quotes. So I'm just going to screen record them so you can pause it if the website is not working for you to just read and see through the pictures. So all of these references to different iconography. When properly dried, all species can resurrect. Here you can see it here. This is the resurrection again, the same time-lapse video. So, okay, so they acknowledge that the mucor or cobweb mold that have contaminated the mushroom, but they do have the same dried, the same effects as the Amanita. That's what I thought. They produce, all subspecies of Amanita produce exactly the same spun out or outspun threads. But one explanation could be there's a quality of the Amanita muscaria that whatever tries to decompose it, at least maybe in certain settings, it maintains the qualities of the mushroom, the original like muscimol, which in a way would truly make it everlasting, immortal, and things like that. This is one of the main Hindu sacred texts, largely centered around soma, this sacred plant, and it's going through all its different references and names that it was given in the Rig Veda. You can see there are very many. A vast area of ancient Eurasia was home to the sacred god with hundreds of sacred names. Mithra, another underground cult. Here we have Mithra being birthed from a cosmic egg. More quotes and references. Here's the Messiah in the Old Testament. Eucharist in the New Testament. So now we can see the more direct Christian influences with the New Testament here. Bread of life, the living water, the Word of God. The Word of life. Here are many of the different names of Christ, which are really names of the mushroom. The Holy Grail. All of its symbology. The living bread. The secret of the living bread and the ambrosia is the natural ability of dried Amanita Muscaria to resurrect in 3 days to produce the eternal fleece, the golden fleece, um, like Jason and the Argonauts. Here, a dried stem is sprouting the eternal fleece after hydration with 10 times its weight in water. Both dried cap and stem will generate the fleece. The mushroom can be powdered and still resurrects. So you don't even need a whole mushroom, you can powder the mushroom. The sacred wine. So this is just their infusion, I believe, into juice. Yeah, just pasteurized grape juice. They infuse it. The names of a god. So here they just have a huge list of the different names of God, of the mushroom, through mythology and even in folklore and stuff. It makes the mushroom pretty much the most named substance on the planet, or concept or object. Especially Odin has the most names of any god in history, and so that adds a bunch to the Amanita Muscaria because it is Odin is as well a personification of the mushroom. And you could see the different cultural interpretations of the mushroom with between Hindu, Norse, Judaism, all those things, Persian, Egyptian, Sumerian. They all had their own associations with the mushroom. Dionysus and Greek mythology. All spotted wild animals were considered representations of Dionysus, in reference to the spots of the Amanita Muscaria. Another secretive cult. Osiris and Horus. So they talk about how barley appears to be the best grain to grow the fleece of the germinated or germination from dried Amanita Muscaria when culturing the living bread. So they easily, so there was a way you could make bread with the Amanita Muscaria through this process and give it the sense of the living bread, right? It was a bread that grew and gave all of sorts of different experiences. Odin, Hermes and Hermeticism, the romanticized lapis philosophorum is based off of the Amanita. We also have Thoth, which Hermes and Hermeticism is based off of. Thoth is already the most or the longest worshipped god of any deity from history. So you have Odin, who's the most named god. Thoth is the longest worshipped god from primarily from 6000 BC to 3000 BC by Egypt, and then on through Hermes and Mercury, and still through Egypt, they still worshipped Thoth, but he was no longer necessarily the primary deity. You could say at least 6,000 years of worship, and longer if you count alchemy, who was based off of Hermes Trismegistus, who was a fusion of Hermes, Mercury, and Thoth. So the lore gets pretty interesting of that, but again, a lot of the symbology comes back down to the Amanita Muscaria. So lots of history here because it's pretty complex stuff. The golden embryo, hatches. Oftentimes, mushrooms were called stones, usually in reference to how they first start when they look kind of like a hardened egg, and then they grow and sprout into a full mushroom to release their spores. The philosopher's stone. So what's interesting about alchemy is it's all coded messages. It's all hidden recipes, symbolism that spans thousands of years of history. And so these people into this esoteric practice, everything was a symbol for something else, either for a real process or for the knowledge of a process, the chemical formula, And ultimately, what gave rise to our current science. And it was all through the romanticization of how to obtain the effects of this mushroom, even when the actual mushroom was forgotten and lost. They still sought out different chemicals and different ways of creating special elixirs. And ultimately, how we got liquor was made by alchemists and many other substances and devices and objects we use today were made in pursuit of this stuff. The tarot, you can see in the artwork, the mushroom is kind of encoded. It's always, with this, doesn't really look like a sun, but at the same time, it's meant to resemble a sun because the mushroom was also a symbol of the sun and light, and also of the moon as well. It had that dual symbology. Angels, sky fathers, zodiacs. Beelzebub, Lord of the Flies, the fly catching ability, and all of its references in the Bible. The Odes of Solomon. Vesta, the Samaveda, and the Rig Veda. And that will conclude the main archiving of the research in the website that they put together here, which I think is worth keeping, whether you disagree with some of their things or not, whether they missed out on a lot of stuff. It's worth checking out if you're just interested. When it comes to the actual golden fleece here, or the living bread, I don't know if there's conclusive evidence of whether it's safe, whether it is a mold that somehow contains the properties of the Amanita, or it is a special quality of the Amanita that just defies even more of what we know about the mushroom, which is not a lot to begin with. Its ability to give you this experience, its multiplicative abilities, so you can make some for everyone. You can have huge stores of it. Even if you only find one mushroom, you can create a lot. So, and that explains the legends of so many different stories of sacred texts, especially Jesus and Dionysus, and Osiris, and the Rig Veda and the Vedas, all that kind of stuff. Super interesting stuff. Just wanted to archive the website so we at least have something to fall back on in the event that it goes away forever. Thanks for watching.